3 years ago, I was between jobs when a friend's dad mentioned an open marketing position with his company. Originally from New York and having lived in Austin for close to a decade, I'd begun getting the itch to try something and somewhere new. Working for a company in the fueling sector sounded stable, but in an era of quickly advancing technology, it also sounded a bit boring. After hearing his enthusiasm for the innovative fuel dispenser and payments technology he and his team were working on, I found myself becoming more interested in the job and open to sticking around. Not once have I regretted that decision. The culture at DFS is innovative and customer-centric. I've been involved with solutions that are truly shifting how consumers interact with fueling systems and how retailers and fleet operators do business. What makes this evolution so incredible isn't just the technology, but the minds and efforts behind the mission. One great example of this is DFS Anthem UX platform. Join me as I talk with two members of the team who were involved in the launch as they share their stops, starts, and lessons learned from concept to manufacturing and beyond. I'm Kristen Butler, North America Marketing and Communications Manager for Dover Fueling Solutions, or DFS as we're known around here. And I have with me two of, I would say, probably the most expert of experts when it comes to Anthem UX platform with me today. So I've got John Morris, who is our Senior Director of Anthem Product Management, and Scott Negley, our Senior Director of Product Management. So welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for being the first in our round of North America podcast series.
Yeah, well done. I think we could just drop the mic right there and call it a cut. Yeah, cut it. Yeah.
Well
done.
That's a lot of flattery.
Great
Thank
setup.
you so much. All right, maybe I should quit while I'm ahead. Okay, so I thought it would be really good to get a sense of, you both have a longevity with DFS and with the industry. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background, how you ended up with DFS. Anyone want to go first?
Sure, I'll start. Yeah. So I have a computer science and math degree and a background in software development and software development management in financial tech. So I spent most of my career, now maybe half my career, since I've been here for 15 years, in fintech. And I moved from the Northeast down to Austin, Texas in 2006, working still at a high-tech brokerage firm. Mm-hmm. And in 2009, when the equity market shifted, I found myself looking for another job. I was water ski friends, and my kids were friends with the director of HR at Wayne Fueling Solutions at the time. And he said, "You got to check this place out." And I was like, okay, I'm not sure. There's a big change, 120-year-old manufacturing company at the time. And I was like, I don't know, it's a big change for me. And so I did it, and the rest is history. I've always been doing some really cool, innovative, high-tech, I think industry-changing, things since I've been here. And so it's been a lot of fun, a lot of learning, a lot of great progress here.
This is interesting. It just came up for me as you were talking about how you landed here. My story is very similar.
Oh, really?
I can actually remember same thing, transitioning out of a job. My friend's dad sitting in the living room telling me there was an open marketing position at DFS, his company.
Oh, okay.
And what sold me was his description of Anthem UX platform.
Wow.
And I had never actually seen one yet out in the field, but it just sounded really cool to me. It sounded like the company was doing a lot to move the industry forward, and that's what caught my attention.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt that we're always exploring and trying to do new cool things here, and that's surely what keeps me going.
Yeah. All right, Scott. What about you?
Oh,
you've got a little more than 15 years.
A few more than 15 years. I recently actually hit the 40-year mark, which I tell my kids, your old man's a dinosaur. This is not normal or usual. It's interesting. This stop is like the opposite end of my continuum on the petroleum industry, because my first job coming out of school, I was an engineer. I worked for a company that did uh, new builds and refurbishing of refineries. So I was a field engineer at the Exxon and Hess refineries in New Jersey. That was a short-lived stint because they didn't quite work out, in terms of the program that I was in. Left that, uh, came down, to Wayne at the time, Wayne in Salisbury, Maryland, as an engineer. First design, me and this other colleague were the first two engineers that they had hired quite literally in 15 years. That gives you a sense for the industry at the time.
Yeah.
And funny thing, one of the things that my boss at the time gave me to do was to design the very first credit card reader in a dispenser. It was all before pay at the pump. And I remember I always tell people I thought that was the dumbest idea.
No one's ever going to use that.
Why would anybody do that? This is just stupid. And my design, fortunately, was not used. It's gotten much better over time. And then that was the first. So I spent the first 12 years in engineering, 17 of them before moving over to the product management side of things. And after 17 years, we had a slight labor issue with the factory up there, and they moved the entire company down here. And some of it, I begrudgingly came because I'm a Yankee at heart, and I wasn't going to come any further south than Maryland. But as John mentioned, I did, and the rest is history. I'm a Texan now.
We're all Northeasterners then.
Yeah.
Could you maybe give me your elevator pitch version of how you describe Anthem UX?
My elevator pitch would be, and the tagline that we use sometimes in some of our early slides was, how do you take the stress out of what's considered a distressed purchase? So can you use technology and can you use the applications that are available to make a game-changing impact to an experience that we all do, in our daily lives, whether it's once a week, twice a week, a couple times a month, refueling. And, is there a way to make it such that your experience at the gas pump is similar to the experience you have with these things, and that it's personal, relevant, simple, understood, and maybe even fun? And I think in our industry, that was the big challenge in terms of how do you deliver that type of technology and that type of design into an industry space that has historically done things very slowly and is not very open or, I think, accepting of change, or does it very slowly. But I think that's the real thing. How do we separate ourselves as a technology and an innovation champion to really make an impact out on the forecourts where we supply our equipment?
Okay. I like that. Really, really great notes you just hit there. Anything that you would add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great opportunity for us to kind of pivot a little bit with regards to like how, what's going on in the industry, in the C-store industry, right? When you consider the fact that customers have so many choices now, right? And loyalty has a lot to do with that, with regards to being able to kind of delight a customer somehow. Mm-hmm. So, I think before Anthem came around, we were building and selling dispensers through distributors that were just battle axes, right? Super reliable, very accurate, dependable, high availability, just, really, commercial, machines that were just so dependable, right? And Anthem came around, and so we were selling to the retailer who was buying the pumps. Mm-hmm. And so when Anthem came around, it gave us a little bit of we took a little bit of a different stance. We started to realize that in this market, delighting the end customer is a very important thing for the retailers and C-store people. And so, Anthem, as is designed to do just that, right? And so getting folks to come back, want to come there, have real value at the dispenser, beyond just the fueling itself, but also be able to kind of get, deals and specials and be able to leverage their loyalty and all that. That was a real big dynamic change, I think, for us when it came to kind of figuring out, that there was essentially pull through by delighting the fueling customer versus selling it just to the retailer. And then the retailer kind of saw that and said, I got to have that thing. Right. And so that's the cool thing for me.
I mean, the other thing, it's if you think about an evolutionary breakthrough like what we think this was, it literally almost came 20 years, almost exactly after we did another. The platform sits on an innovation dispenser, which itself was an evolutionary breakthrough at the time, back in the early 2000s, because that was something that somewhat redefined the whole form factor and look and feel with the design aesthetic of the man-machine interface altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And it changed, and it literally it changed the industry so much that everybody copied us, and we had literally had companies that were literally trying to copy us, like without even trying to hide anything. And so now it's kind of neat to then kind of take this step a few years removed and actually apply something even more evolutionary and game changing onto that original sort of pioneering type product. So it's kind of a neat experience in that regard.
I think one of the things that we got right was that we didn't try to change too much, right? We realized that by changing the door, the display, and the face of the unit, and keeping the flagship Ovation was a very good move, because then we could say to folks, look, you've got the reliable meter, you got the reliable dispenser. We're taking our flagship Ovation pump, and we're putting a pretty face on it. And so with all those benefits. So I think that was something we got really right. We didn't do too much change or try to say like, hey, we're going to modify the look and feel or the hydraulics or anything like that. That would have been, I think, a mistake at the time.
Really great point. You both were here from the start. So Anthem UX was launched in 2020. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Shortly before my time at DFS. Okay.
Almost a 5-year birthday coming
up.
Oh. In fact,
we'll have to celebrate.
It is the 5-year birthday this month.
This month?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a 5. Did you bring a cake?
That can be arranged. Okay. I don't have one today, but I'm on it.
Okay.
I will never turn down cake or any opportunity to go and order one. So, okay. So 5 years, but even before that, there was, I'm assuming, a lot of conversation that turned into ideas and development and trial and error. And you've been there along with some other folks from the very start. So here is where I'm going to open the floor a little bit. And
you want to know about the failures?
I want to know all of it. Like how did this come to be from what you can remember? Who initially sat in a room somewhere and said, let's put a giant touchscreen on a fuel dispenser? Like, what was the evolution of this?
So so 5 years, literally, the product's been out. And then almost 5 years before that is when everything sort of germinated. The seed sort of took root. And we were trying to figure out, and like you can understand it, a company like ours where you have a bunch of designers and product folks and you're trying to innovate. It's a lot of start, stop. You get ideas and you talk about them for a couple of weeks and then they sort of fizzle. Mm-hmm. And that's just the nature of development. That's how things happen, or in many cases don't happen, and sometimes for the right reasons. We were trying to actually start. We had a user conference that was going to be coming up in the previous spring. So this was the fall, like I want to say September, October of 2015.
Okay.
And we were thinking, a bunch of us were thinking, well, what are we going to do for this user conference? It's going to really kind of just think, the general sort of, the speaker and the panels and the industry topics are all fine, but is there anything we can do to kind of add a little spice? And so a small group of us kind of got in a room. I think it was in the other building, building B. And there was maybe 4 or 5 product and engineering folks. John and I were 2 of them. And we just started to get on a whiteboard or some scratch pad or whatever it was. And we thought, what could we do to change the paradigm, that would really be impactful in terms of our sort of product positioning and how our approach to how we could solve a customer's problems. And we had to do this in a very short amount of time because it was only about a 6-month window-ish between that time and the user conference. And that's how everything got kicked off. We got started there.
Yeah, but there was a germinating kind of event in one of our global leadership meetings a few years before, where there was a contest to talk about, hey, what can we do to make to change up things for the user and kind of figure out how to remove the distressed purchase. And we were still using that term. We were using that term then.
Yeah.
I remember vividly being on a team. You were on my team, where we had a contest, and we proposed a mobile payment, mobile phone payment, and that fell pretty flat, and it shocked me because I was like, "This is it, right? I mean, this clearly makes sense that people are going to want to pay with a mobile phone." I won't go on too much about it, but we can I'll tell you this: the leadership team at the time, particularly one gentleman who was the leadership team at the time, he was like, "Morris, sit down." He's like, "We're not doing that." And the reason he didn't want to do it was because our payment terminals were a cash cow at the time. And he's just like, and he was a numbers guy. And he's just like, "Nope." He's like, "You mean we're not going to sell the payment terminal?" And I was like, "Yeah, like we're going to use the phone. The dispenser will cost less for everybody, and it's a win-win." And he's like, "Sit down."
Great idea.
Bad
It's not
idea.
so much business savvy.
As it turns out, we took the journey, we created a concept vehicle. We actually did a lot of the UI elements on the mobile phone and brought them to Anthem, right? So, but that's where we kind of cut our teeth in terms of kind of figuring out how to kind of really improve the user experience from a UI experience perspective. And then it really fell flat. Because what we learned was that when we started talking about the concept of a mobile phone app, that would be ours essentially, it fell really flat when the major oil companies were like, "Well, hang on a second, those are our customers, those are not your customers," right? And they were just riding the wave of loyalty programs and mobile phones too, and so they wanted their customers to use their app.
It's kind of like what the park ranger says: don't get between a mama bear and her cub. And we were kind of straying a little bit in between those two when it came to the oil company, retailer, and their customer. They didn't want us to be a partner. Yeah. It was a really great idea. Unfortunately, it just was a little ahead of itself.
But that's what made us realize, let's cram that experience and take what we learned about the virtues of a better UI and streamlined interface and stuff like that. And just, why don't we put it right on the pump? And that's what happened in that room. We're like, let's just put it right on the pump. And then all of a sudden we were like, okay, yeah, we own that. That's ours. Let's go for it.
It was interesting when we first did the concept car, we threw everything at it. And knowing that we weren't going to be able to do everything, we were going to have to take some things and sort of whittle them down or take some things away. Or sometimes we had a connected car concept going on. Like, it would have been great if all the cars had a standard protocol for connectivity, which they don't. They all have their own proprietary ones.
We went and talked to GMC.
John and I took a trip to GM to go talk to them about it, and they was like, yeah. And so they had all these different things with, we had FaceTime going on. We actually, believe it or not, one of the proud things, I think, in one of our concepts, we did how you have the ability to change the contrast between light and dark on your phone.
Yeah.
We did that before Apple. We did that on the pump before they actually introduced it in the phone. Yes, we did. And so there was a lot of things, you got a lot of rewinding back to the user conference that year. We worked with a design company to kind of get something together, and John and the engineers were cutting touchscreen displays apart, and we were trying to use a 32-inch display, I think, and fit it into the form factor of a bezel, and it just couldn't work. We thought, because 32 was like a standard, I think, at the time we were trying to make. Yeah. So I had to chop 5 inches off of that eventually to kind of make it fit within the actual design.
So the first dispenser of the future, that's what we were calling it, right, was what we lovingly refer to now as Little Boy, because we'll talk about Big Boy, I'm sure, in a few minutes. But so the screen that we couldn't source a screen that fit in the opening. So basically, what we were doing is we were trying to fit the biggest screen in the Ovation door that we could. Mm-hmm. And so we had this bezel, and the screen, we realized that if we kind of just tilted it back a little bit, and then we put it in there, the width would be really good, perfect fit. Oh, that's great, right? And then the bottom of it came down, but then the bottom of it basically didn't fit. And so we quote unquote buried it inside the dispenser. So the bottom 6 inches of the display is not even showing. And then we built the app to fit just the top part of the screen. So you open the door and there's this like screen where there's like 6 inches of it just kind of hanging down at the bottom with
Just
like
black.
Windows logos and stuff like
Okay.
Like,
Oh, wow.
it's like, you couldn't even. It was just like it was a mock-up, obviously, and a concept vehicle. But that's how far we were going. And then we had the camera that we used was from the Xbox Connect. Do you remember that? Do you remember like dancing and doing stuff in front of this thing from years ago? So it had the capability of being able to do more than just a normal camera. It was like one of the first of its kind. They could tell like, whether you were, it could tell some things about you, like whether you were hot or whatever, but whatever those kind of demographic things were. And we used some of those, and we even did some like gesturing. Do you remember that initial little boy?
We were pointing.
You could do a thumbs up.
If you made a reference to the thumbs up,
yeah.
Or couldn't you point at things too?
Yep, you could point and click.
So
and
we were trying to
your
do
finger there,
that, but that turned out to be a little bit too much, to kind of build into one application. But that's what I mean.
Wow.
We threw everything at the original concept, yeah. And then you had to think about all these stupid practical things like heat and water and stuff that gets. And I came from the day back in my early card reader days. We actually tried doing touchscreens as a company back in the 80s, believe it or not, and we would put 5,000 BTU air conditioners in each dispenser head to keep it cool. Now, fortunately, the technology has progressed, but that's you have to go from that point to where we are now with what we were doing with Anthem and worrying about touch sensitivity and does it work with when you're wearing winter gloves? And how about what does the raindrop do, or what does other precipitation do to it?
Even ruggedness, right? I mean, ruggedness is something I mean, early on when, we're kind of fast forwarding now to like, the dispenser and our launch and stuff, but like, there were a lot of folks who just were not believers. And folks would challenge the ruggedness. They'd challenge, hey, you're making too much change. You're trying to do too much. No one's going to want a big screen and all that stuff.
Too many bells and whistles.
So there were a lot of non-believers.
You heard that a lot.
And that was a little bit frustrating. But then actually, I think the way we're wired, it made us want it more. Right. And so,
the amazing part was then, how do you take all these things, these great ideas, and then distill them down? There's a lot of VOC that has to happen. And we did a lot of the challenge you always have in our space, as John referenced earlier, is that we're a B2B product, but it's a B2C consumer experience.
Yes.
That's not that doesn't happen all the time in a lot of different companies. And so we have to really, so you have two different users that you have to make sure. The guy who's buying our equipment's got to make sure his customers understand it. And so you have to make it tailored to their needs and their behaviors. But how do you take all of these things though and distill them in, this technology into an app that makes sense, into a design language that makes sense, and then all the software that has to happen and all the different things that we are already one of the most regulated products that you can imagine that we put out, from, making sure that we have all the environmental regulations, that we do all of the FCC emission regulations, the safety, the user experience stuff. And then the development of this was kind of fascinating. Even I would say that in my 4 decades being here, there's nothing that approached how just intense and just amazing the development journey was to build it. I mean, the software for this was done on 3 continents. And so we'd be doing stuff here, and then the team in Europe would then be waking up, and we'd be handing off, and the choreography that was necessary between design groups. They're doing all this at breakneck speed because we had all these, we had this aspiration of getting this product out. I know it wasn't.
It was insane.
It was 29. It was we wanted to get it out earlier than we did. Of course, then who knew a pandemic? To have the most evolutionary, some would say, a revolutionary product that this industry has ever seen, and launch it in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah, what a time!
Pandemic.
What a time!
So that was even an added challenge on top of everything else, which made it very interesting.
I think we got a little lucky, and then also we were pretty smart with our original architects. Really gave, they basically knew, what kind of, pitfalls we've seen in the past, right? And then we architected it a little bit for the future, and we architected it as a platform. The initial launch was like, all right, well, hang on, we're building a fuel dispenser for 27-inch. We weren't even thinking about the smaller version and stuff. But then what I saw happen once we got into the first year or so of Anthem was, it's like oh my God, this thing is outrageous because it is truly a platform, right? We can use the same app for different models, like a 12-inch version or a 7-inch version, and we can use this for different, product lines like EV or like fleet. And so once that started to really click and it started to snowball, I mean, we sat in the PI planning this morning, and every group is using the Anthem platform, right?
Mhm.
And in the past, it was just not like that, right? Every product was for a fit for purpose,
Yeah.
for a solution. So even something that was like a 5.7-inch model versus a 10.4-inch model on our old board, it was like, okay, well, we have to build an app, right? And so you'd have customers saying, hey, I want this feature, that feature, whatever, and then be like, oh, well, we developed it for this version, we haven't developed it for this version yet. Those days are gone, right? Now if someone says, hey, I want a media capability, right?
Mhm.
We change it in the Anthem platform, and then we get it in all the fuel lines, and then we get it in EVC, and we get it in fleet, like
Just
automatically.
much easier
Right?
to transition.
Michael
It's become
was
a core
saying,
solution.
Michael was saying, 2 years back, rewind 2 years, he's saying, oh, I really want media in fleet. And I was like, oh, you just got to be ready for it, productize it, right? Because it's done. You're ready.
Yeah.
It's pretty insane for
And it was even something going back to when the public first saw it at that first user conference. We were so, I'll never forget when we, I think the run up, and I think you and I went over, they delivered it over into the hotel.
Yeah. We made people put their phones in the
so
basket.
and so even I, as an engineer, my background is when you designing stuff and scheming out in CAD or drawings, it's one thing. But then when you finally see it come to fruition, it really is it's a rush. It really isn't it when you see your concept real.
Yeah.
And I remember walking into that room when we saw everything was gussied up and it was all dusted off, and we saw the actual thing sing and dance. It was a really amazing feeling at that time, and we had sales guys high-fiving us.
It was,
cool. But to John's point, we actually, it was maybe a little bit overdone, but in order for the customers had to come in and see it, we had a special sort of room set apart. Well, you had to give us your phone, and we had to put it in a basket because you wouldn't take pictures. No paparazzi were allowed. And it was really an event because this was a game-changing event, and I'll never forget thinking, okay, this is really cool. Now, how do we commercialize this and make it real? Because it's going to cost a lot. We are already in a commodity market, and the good news for us was this is a way to differentiate yourself and pull yourself out of that commodity trench and offer a retailer a reason to spend more, which we're always struggling with in our space because the other guy always has what you have. And a lot of times it's a race to the bottom. So there was a lot of work done on the engineering side, on the costing side, working with the sales team. We actually went and hired a consultant on pricing and positioning for this product and what we think the value could be. And the funny thing was, even in all the early business case projections, we never, even the most optimistic projections had us at 30% take rate of any of the Ovation production. Mm-hmm. And today we're now sort of hovering just over 20% already, and so we're already getting there. So the adoption has been a lot of fun, but we came out of the gate as an option. It was going to be priced like at $8,500 more than a standard Ovation. It's like, oh, is that going to make it? Are we going to alienate people? Is it going to be a dud? The anxiety was there. Trust me. Is it going to be successful? And it was not. It was a tough road. I'll never forget. When we first started to put the first beta in Georgetown, Country Corner. I mean, I think we had more Wayne people there than they had customers in the span of a month. It was an army. And the first beta site in September of 2019. I remember we had the whole crew there. That was momentous.
Fun, yeah. So you brought up the user conference, and that sparked a memory for me. I remember transporting the big boy in a lot of parts, and some of them are big wielding parts. They're really.
Well, Big Boy was the user conference. Second one.
Yeah, user conference. Right. Do you? Here's a trivia question for you. Do you remember where the parts were stored overnight for Big Boy?
Well, these are the ones. This is the Mac. All the Mac stuff that you would put.
One, yeah. It was in my bed.
I slept
with Big Boy.
I don't know. I think you should probably tell me that. No, that's hilarious.
There was the main chassis, and it came in on a forklift kind of thing. But then the rest of the parts like came in the back of my truck, and so I brought them into my room, and I was like, where am I going to put these things? And I didn't want to lean them up against the wall because if they fall over or whatever, and I didn't want to put them on the floor because the floor was gross. And so I ended up laying them in the bed next to me. And I slept with Big Boy the night before the user conference.
Oh my goodness!
And that, so even
I got that going for me.
So think of it. So John's referring to Big Boy. And so those of you who've seen it, it's the son of Little Boy, of what became Anthem. And this was even done as another concept car to say, all right, we have another user conference in 2 years. What are we going to do?
What shifted between Little Boy and Big Boy?
It's all about
other than size.
It's about size and
I think what that ended up being was like, all right, well, how can we do something that would kind of revolutionize the form factor, right, and of the future, right? And that's, I think there's a big. There was a lot of the carryover from the software and a big UI and stuff like that. But then we were realizing that like it might be cool to take the leap, even though the execution of that would be like tremendous, right, over time. It might be interesting to kind of see what that might look like from a form factor.
Yeah, I think, and I agree. And whereas Little Boy, which became Anthem, was more of a definition, or how do we take technology and apply it in today's form factor with how the look and feel of everything everybody's very familiar with. Big Boy was taking a walk 5-10 years in advance. Yeah. Like what would the Jetsons use if they would come and want to fuel up here? And it was a very different concept. And we worked with a design company to come up, and we even knew that at some point we thought there was going to be a competitive response to Anthem, Little Boy, and that not only the user conference 2 years later would be give us the impetus to, all right, what's going to be next? What's going to keep that that innovation pipeline going? And if they come out and try to mimic our 27-inch screen, well, we'll go 42. Was it 42?
46.
46?
Woo!
Yeah. Woo! Look out.
And then Big Boy Big Boy is still here in our space, and it still is an inspiration. We use it to show customers in terms of here's the progression of how things could go. And again, from a technology, some of the same technologies, but taking a little bit more liberty with some of the other applications that we do on that. And it could very well serve to be the premise of what we do when we want to sort of have a plan for a successor to Anthem.
Yeah. So over the 5 years, adoption has really increased. You mentioned take rate. Could you maybe quickly explain?
So if you think about take rate is, so you have every month we put out, say, just 1,000 Ovation dispensers, just throwing a number out there. And so if you have, say 300 of those that are using scanning, so the take rate for scanners that month will be 30%. And so we always use the run rate of the actual main dispenser production as the reference point for an option that will actually play. And Anthem is an option. And so even in our most craziest projections, we never thought that the market would ever even approach 30%. And what was even more interesting, especially in the first couple of years, that has been fascinating to me at least, was we all thought that the strategic accounts would be the ones that were going to sign up and really kind of go like head first in for this again, to allow them for separation to sort of differentiate. The exact opposite has happened. And the distributors are the ones who actually picked it up and ran with it, which we had no idea in our sort of modeling that would ever work out that way. But the distribution, team, they were the ones who have carried the load the first couple of years. We're now getting more interest from across the broader portfolio of different segments. But it was really interesting now and I actually think now that the 30% ratio that we actually had built into the extreme upper end model is very achievable now in the next couple of years.
I've been at DFS a little over 3 years, and back then it took me a while before I actually saw one of these out in the wild. And now, I still get excited. I don't want to say that that's gone, but it's much more common for me. It really has picked up.
It's got to be really satisfying. It must be really satisfying for you to see ovations everywhere and pay at the pump. Right?
Oh no,
that's wild.
No, especially when your parents would call you up when they're at a gas station somewhere in New England, and then I see your pumps, but they're also only flowing 7 gallons a minute.
Yeah.
Can you do something about that? No, Dad.
So we spent a lot of time talking about the dispenser or the user interface itself, but I mean, it's we have to talk a little bit about the fact that, like, anybody can build an awesome app, right?
Right.
But there is an ecosystem play here that's really powerful and kind of game changing too. The remote monitoring and diagnostics that we get from our DX Monitor product. I'm not trying to be too salesy here, but I really believe this, right?
Yeah.
The media delivery mechanism that we have.
Yeah.
Our comms network, our site level comms network that's EMV compliant and super capable wirelessly. All those things kind of came together to give us an offering that's like pretty exceptional. I think it really paves the way for us to do some we're ready now to kind of really kind of turn up the gas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about how some of that is performing? And then I'd also love to hear, where do you think it's going? Because I know the ideas have not stopped.
We have some customers, we have like distributors and customers alike that refer to this thing as a selling machine, right? I've heard that
very early on. Yep.
Obviously we have tons of ROI data that talk about the lift in the store and all that stuff too. It's very satisfying to see the retailers using it using it right. Being able to put the ads for their products in the store on the pump, or being able to kind of put advertisers for local venues around town, and be able to kind of incorporate the community into it. Even I've heard like where they'll do like high school prep, getting ready for football games and rallies and stuff like that, or promposals or whatever it is. And so it's really neat to see it be kind of more than just a dispensing machine.
I think the cool part about it is, the thing that I think always even gets me very introspective is the fact, even in the first couple of years, we would come up with other things that we could do that when we did the original market requirements, you had your core thing. We did the flying car, but we knew some of that stuff wasn't going to be real. But there are things now that have come out that either customers request, or we have internal discussions about features that John and I hadn't even conceived when we first built the requirements document, which was fascinating. And he's still going to get me my scent sticks. I know that. Which is,
have you heard about those?
The fragrances that are going to come out when you show a coffee ad, you'll have the puff of coffee out, or fresh baked bread, or pizza. Think about that.
So I have a long run of experience in trade shows, and we used to use that. We would pipe smells of popcorn.
There's a reason that all the casinos in Las Vegas smell like vanilla, right?
Yeah.
I'm just not sure that I want, like, when I get a whiff of cinnamon bun,
it's gonna be mixed in with
as I get a whiff
it's
of
gonna come,
diesel fuel.
Yeah.
But the great part is you have this amazing, I tell people, like, in all my time at this company, we've never had the horsepower and the capability on an island that we have now. The thing is, you have a digital canvas that you literally can do anything on.
Walk-up music, right?
Walk-up music will be there, and I think the things we're doing with cameras, with AI, with voice activation, that are still, we haven't even scratched the surface. And I think what's really nice about this, I think the exciting part is, we reached a point probably 18 months ago where we knew that this was evolutionary technology, and some would argue revolutionary. And remember, we're an industry that we're the big, like, cruiser in the strait. We're not a speedboat. We do things very slowly, very measured, very deliberately, so we don't react to change very well. Yeah. And what we did in this technology is we threw a lot of things at our industry to try to adopt and adapt to their different forecourt structures. And we knew there was going to be growing pains coming out of it. There would be hiccups. There would be wrinkles that would have to be ironed out with the different, adding a smart switch into things, MNSPs, all the different pairing that has to go on. It's a whole new, and our service and support network, we're a creature of habit. They have behaviors that they've developed over decades. Mm-hmm. and you have to then sort of modify those behaviors. But we hit that spot about, I would say, 12 to 18 months ago, where we learned, we got, the software keeps getting better. Now the fun part now we don't have to worry. It's not as much cleanup and fix. It's innovate and what's next. And I think that's the part that's going to be really exciting, I think.
There was an installer learning curve for sure.
Absolutely.
It became a real challenge, almost a barrier initially. But this kind of, ability to kind of do more on the platform is pretty exciting too. I think back in the day, you would buy this dispenser and it would just sit on your island and do what it was made to do for 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, right? I like to say now that like the C-store folks are kind of safeguarding their transaction, or making, a purchase that's kind of, future-proofed, if you will, which is a little wild to think of in this industry. But I mean, you're buying an appliance that basically has the ability to kind of be improved with software over time.
Yeah.
And so, we've never been in a better spot. C-store people who are making the investments and buying the dispensers have never been in a better spot than they are right now, because if they choose us, then they can get the benefits of the improvements, which is pretty cool.
I mean, the other thing was kind of the other realization that hit me a couple of years ago when we first started putting this out. It first started to get a little bit of traction in the wild. But you might have showed me was we never considered a gas pump to be this sort of leading edgy product. It's on the threshold. And then it started showing up people, young kids, teenagers in TikTok videos in front of the pump. Look at this with the cool touchscreen dispenser. And I'm like, we have definitely changed something here, because this is not your daddy's gas pump anymore. And that where we knew we've done something that really sort of touched a nerve and actually connected with a different and that's what we have to make sure that we're doing. As there's a whole younger generation, a whole younger demographic that's coming up. How do you appeal to them, even though some of them may not be driving cars anymore? Well, that's a whole separate issue.
There was an early marketing campaign we did that had Billie Eilish on it.
Oh yeah.
And 9 out of 10 people in the room didn't know who Billie Eilish was.
I was including.
Oh,
so like Billy
You're
Idol.
Volunteering
that. I was one of them.
When was this?
I thought it was Billy Idol.
6. It was right at the beginning.
Wow.
That was pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really valid point, though. The demographic is just going to keep changing, and those expectations change with it.
Yeah. I mean, we've made some jokes now. Even when we first started, we were talking, we're going to use these, we're going to configure these to have like a millennial lane. And now this year I've been advised at least once, you can't use millennial anymore. It's the Gen Z or whatever it is now for the younger set, and it's one it'll be only a scanner or a tap reader and no printer, and it's something that'll be just designed for speed.
I want that so bad.
And we'll get there, but that's the whole thing. You have to keep kind of thinking and sort of reinventing ourselves into what's next. How can we continue to sort of keep the bar high? Because the other guy's going to come at us, and we just have to keep raising the bar,
staying at the top.
Yeah.
So other than scent sticks, what do you have in mind?
Are you laughing about that?
No,
it's not a joke.
I'm all for it.
Okay.
Well, walk-up music.
What else? What do you see if you could sort of pick one idea out of this box that we've been building that you think would really be beneficial for the customers, that would help move us forward? What can I ask you for one thing, or is that asking you to limit it too much?
I got one kind of.
Well, you give yours.
I got one kind of general theme. Essentially, it's and I don't want to just jump on the AI bandwagon, but I have some examples, right? So I mean, I think being able to use the camera in the dispenser to identify the customer and be able to provide relevant content on the dispenser, even so far as to look at the car and realize it's a sunny day and say, this car needs a car wash, give them a coupon, right? If you play a 15-second ad for a coupon for a car wash on a snowy gray day, it's a waste, right? It's a waste for the retailer, it's a waste for the customer. No one wants it, right? It's just a waste. That's 15 seconds of your life that you want back. But on the right day, in the right kind of situation, it's gold. right?
Do you think it
And
could?
then similarly, like, if there's, kids in the car,
Yeah.
family person, kind of there, then maybe the content on the screen is different than, somebody else in the car.
I agree with the camera part. I think that'll change things from not only the profile, the demographic capabilities of understanding who your customer is, not necessarily who they are, but what they are. And then I think if you could, this has the capability of taking the whole loyalty concept to a different level, where literally at some point in the not too distant future, we would be able to have an experience where you'd come up to the dispenser like you do when you turn on your phone, and it has your home screen on it there. It has your favorite apps on there. It has your music, your music,
For sure.
your favorite color, whatever it is, your favorite scent sticks. You could have something that would literally be tied in exactly to your preferences. And I think the drive for convenience, the drive for loyalty, the ability that retailers want to be able to make themselves more sticky with their customers for things like that. And the nice part about it is we now have sort of a line of sight in terms of the application, the product that we're building to be able to get there.
Yeah. Yeah,
For
that's
sure.
great. Well, that is
How do we
really
do for our
interesting.
first? How do we do for the first podcast?
That was, I don't know how to top that. I think out of the gate, as long as all of our equipment worked and we picked it all up, that was excellent. Is there anything else that you think we should definitely hit on that maybe we haven't?
I don't want to sound salesy, so I'm trying not to
Yeah,
make
no,
a pitch, right? But I'm just talking about things I firmly
I
believe
think
in.
getting that unique history was really valuable. Yeah, and I like what you said about the ecosystem, because that is also really important. I don't know whether it's too early to talk. Oh, go ahead.
But the one thing I want to make sure especially the one thing that you hear that is often, it's a cliche sometimes overused, but the whole takes a village thing. In this case, it really does. We have teams deployed everywhere and we even referenced them early on in the beginning of the concept, but they continue to be sort of the backbone and the foundation of what this does. And we would be without that support group, without those development folks, both in Austin and Krakow and India, and the teams that are all doing that work. I think it's a competitive advantage for us to have teams like that dispersed and who are all aligned and who really make this wheel turn.
Yeah,
really is.
And I think it goes throughout the whole org, right? We have situations where sourcing makes a diving catch, right, to enable us, or finance. The whole organization really makes it successful.
Yeah.
It is a team effort.
And I do like that there's a culture here built around being allowed to take those risks, and being bold enough to take them, to develop new products. I mean, I think even about our EV charger and how we went to manufacturing that in-house versus contracting with another manufacturer. And that came similarly, a whole new experience, new things we had to learn in ways that we had to pivot. But
that's a whole other
in
podcast
the end,
section.
Yeah, I know. I've totally.
I hope we'll be invited
I've diverted, but
could we have cocktails next time?
Yeah.
These will be
it's
right here.
Close to happy hour. Let's do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, but that was. I think we hit on some really good notes. I'm wondering if there is anything that you would maybe add. I know Bullock POS is a big thing for us. Does that play into Anthem UX in any particularly special way that we should talk about?
Probably.
Oh,
I think it does. Right?
I think
one of our biggest dots.
Yeah,
so good call.
One, I have this aspiration. With our team, the 1 + 1 = 3 mantra is how, just like Apple does. All the Apple stuff seems to work better with other Apple things. I would like it to make that now that we have this, I think the best portfolio of products that we've had in my time here, in terms of the comprehensive end-to-end solution. How do you make our stuff work better? And one of the things we're going to even do with this Anthem technology is with these other products, whether it's Bullock, whether it's ATG, whether it's EV, how to make them when they're married together, we can make them better. We can make them function. We can add more features. We can improve the user experience, do all those types of things. I think there's all kinds of opportunities out there. This is really I mean, the important thing that we touched on at the very outset of this journey was it's a platform, not just a pretty dispenser face, and it really is intended for that, to be able to be applied across a wide range of different applications, which is really, I think, the exciting part for us.
Yeah, that's a great ending note. All right, Scott and John, thank you so much for your time and for sharing some really colorful history on how Anthem UX platform came to be.